Alright, good morning everyone. This is Ms. Dunn. Since some of you said that you had questions about the new AP environmental exam, or just new APs in general, I thought I would address that here in this video, since nobody came to office hours this morning. So, first thing you should know about it is that there's a new test date. It's no longer on the 11th. Please pause and put this in your calendar. It's at 4 p.m. Eastern on Monday, May 18th. And everyone, I would expect, would take the test on this day, unless there are extenuating circumstances. I'll get to that in a little bit, but this is the new test date. What is the test? So, as far as the structure of the exam goes, and its timing, there are two FRQs now. So no multiple choice at all, and just two FRQs. But they're not equally weighted. So the first question, you'll get 25 minutes. And what I believe is an additional 5 minutes to upload that question onto the site. Then you'll have another 15 minutes for question 2, as well as 5 minutes to upload that. I'm a little bit suspicious of this timing they provided on their site because it doesn't add up to 45, so I'm wondering whether it's like actually you get 20 minutes for question 1 and 5 minutes to upload that. Regardless, this adds up to 50 minutes. It's around the distribution that you'll be doing. Once you submit the first question, you cannot go back to it. So if you think you're almost done with question 1 and it's only been 10 minutes and you want to upload it, I would recommend you check your work because it'll advance you to question 2. You'll still only have a time limit of 15 minutes for it, I believe, and then you kind of wasted that extra time for question 1 to check your work or anything like that. Okay, so let's talk about these FRQs a little bit more. The first FRQ is going to be 60% of your score, so more than half, and which makes sense because you get more than half the time on it. FRQ number 1 is called Design and Investigation, and this has to do with the scientific method. Remember control groups and independent variables and dependent variables and all of that. This week in the course outline for week 3 of distance learning, I linked some Khan Academy videos that should remind you about those elements of the scientific investigation. And specifically, you're going to be given an authentic environmental scenario. Okay, so they'll tell you about some scenario, and they'll either give you a model or a visual representation. So like, for example, this week you had the pictures of the two communities, or you could get like a diagram of the water cycle or of El Nino or something. Or they could give you quantitative data, so that means numbers. They'll give you numbers in a table that people collected, maybe. And then, given this, as like kind of the premise, like maybe we're building a dam and here is data about the water flow through the dam or something like that. I'm not sure. But you'll have to describe or explain the environmental concepts, processes, or models that are shown. So like even if they show you the carbon cycle, you should be able to explain what's going on. And analyze the visual representations or data. So if they give you a graph, you should be able to analyze it. These two things we've been doing all the time. Every FRQ we do does these. That should be nothing new. You do it in your case studies as well. I'm not worried about that. In addition, you should analyze research studies testing environmental principles. What does that mean? It means that if someone describes a study to you, like you should be able to maybe suggest a modification to it. You should be able to identify, as I said earlier, the control, the independent, the dependent, be comfortable using scientific language and seeing what they did in their study. And again, this week I gave 3 sample problems that the AP College Board released for practice. So I understand that some people were concerned that either they know they didn't describe enough or the questions were a little bit weird, they were poorly worded. These were released by College Board, so I can't guarantee that the real thing will necessarily be better, though I agree with you that they could be a little bit clearer in their directions. But again, there are plenty of examples of those in the FRQs, and I would strongly recommend that you go and practice them and look at the solutions that College Board provided. And they also might ask you to describe the environmental problem this is showing and the potential responses. You've been doing that since day 1, not quite, but close enough. If they give you a graph about GM crops or invasive species, you can describe some problems you might expect and potential things you might do to counter that. So really it's just this third bullet point that we haven't emphasized as much because I was going to in the weeks leading up to the AP, and I might still, share some presentations, but we won't have the chance to practice together for that necessarily. FRQ, the second one, you notice I didn't even animate this, and I did that because I wanted to go back and forth. Notice that besides, the breakdown, it's 40% of the score. The first part about what you're given stays the exact same. You're given an authentic scenario alongside the model or quantitative data, and you're still going to describe or explain the environmental concepts, processes, models, and analyze the data. The difference here is that you'll just propose and justify a solution to the environmental problem, which is really similar to the previous the fourth bullet point on FRQ1, and again, something you've been doing all the time. Propose a solution, but also justify. Justify means explain the pros of it and explain the cons of it, and maybe even address one of those potential cons. So we've also been doing that in our case studies. I'm not worried that you all can do it. All right, as far as logistics go, how will you actually take the exam? You can use your computer or your tablet or your phone. To do so, any electronic device will work. On that electronic device, you can either write it out by hand and take a picture or type it out. And then you might be wondering, well, if I write it out by hand and I want to see it on my computer, but I take a picture with my phone, is that okay? You can only use one device to view and upload your solution. So if you view it on your computer, you have to upload it on your computer. That said, you're of course welcome to take a picture with your phone, send it to your email, view that email on your computer, and then upload it with your computer. That's okay. But it might just take a little bit more time. Sorry, I'll leave that up there. I guess you guys will have the slides, never mind. So what about cheating? Obviously, take-home exams are new for the majority of us. It's hard to ensure that you don't look anything up. Therefore, College Board is actually making this test open note. You can use your notes, you can use your book, you can use Google. They can't, they didn't technically say you can use Google, but there's no way they're going to stop you. This link is a link that College Board said about how do you prepare for open note kind of tests. I can get into that a little bit now, but feel free to ask me questions. One thing, or maybe I'll just go through this slide first. So it's hard to look things up. They are designing the questions so they're not simply Googleable. You're applying your skills, and you're like, all the information is out there maybe in some form, but the time it would take you to read it all and synthesize it into a coherent answer is probably more than 25 minutes. Certainly more than the 10 or 15 minutes that you'll have for the second question. So I strongly encourage you to be familiar with the facts anyway. Like, imagine if you were taking a math test and it was algebra based, but you spent most of your time looking up what 2 times 2 is. It would just take you a lot longer. So there is that time constraint. Additionally, the internet can be wrong. Trust me, I have seen my fair share of case studies or assignments where answers were copy-pasted from something and just wrong. People say all sorts of strange things like the carbon from the... I don't know. There are definitely strange things that you'll say that are just wrong because the internet has wrong answers or not as good answers. People making content on the internet are ultimately just people, and they don't always do the best job. So one thing that open note does not mean is it's not open collaboration. You cannot work with other people or go on Reddit and post the question and listen to everyone's responses. I would not do that. I would stay very far away from that. I will not be on Piazza answering questions at this time. This is still for you to synthesize your answer. In recent advances in CS, AI has gotten pretty good at detecting collaboration or plagiarism. I would veer away from that. That field's gotten a lot better. Also, of course, it's just bad to do. But also, it's easy to get caught. It's even me reading your things, I don't know. Patterns are... people produce pretty different answers by default, and patterns emerge fairly quickly. teachers will also be receiving copies of your work for the first time. So for whatever AP exam you take, your AP teacher, in this case for APES, me, will receive copies of your work. It may be used depending on future guidance from administration for instance, some kind of term 3 test thing, but I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me on it. We will receive copies of your work, so maybe a red flag would go off if some student doesn't normally write that way and suddenly does. Additionally, if you are caught, colleges would receive notice of that. So any college that you apply to would know and would factor that into your admissions. Of course, none of you will do this, so it's not an issue. A few other miscellaneous notes that I thought would be worth addressing. You will get a chance to practice, like looking at an online question and submitting it. I think College Board will roll that out on MyAP later in April. There is a makeup date. You may have heard that. There are 2 dates. It's June 3rd, and it is officially for extenuating circumstances only, like if you have a sudden power outage or if you are gravely ill or anything like that. Just like normal. I would strongly recommend against taking it on this date. Not only is it like farther away from the last time that you studied APES in a classroom, the College Board has to approve all the reasons and everything like that. So I would just stick with May 18th. Colleges are still offering credit for it. It's going to save you money in that sense. BLS is still requiring it for all the purposes of GPA boosts or whatever. So there's no reason that it's different in that sense. Of course, if your family is facing whatever financial difficulties and you want to reach out, just let me know and I'll redirect you to the form where you can withdraw and get your money back. And finally, I just want to emphasize, this is just a test. Don't stress about it. I know that under normal circumstances, you all would do amazingly. This is not the same test we've been preparing for, but that's okay. It's still about environmental science. Worst case, these questions are just about something you didn't get, and it's a test. Breathe. It's one test. You'll have deadlines in your life. You'll have tests in your life. It's okay. It'll be okay. Just do your best. That's all I can ask, especially in such a crazy time. The last slide, which I'll share the slide deck, is just a bunch of resources. So the College Board has these kind of AP review days I think every day actually. They have a little lecture. They have compiled a playlist of all the APES lectures. You can go ahead and click on that link to look at it. They're delivered by AP teachers, and unlike our lectures, they're really centered around the AP objectives, like very much teaching to the test. So maybe worth checking those out. I've posted a review book on Classroom before. Here it is again. It's from 2015, so again, it's a little bit different, just like the next link to a YouTube course that goes in a little more in detail about the whole thing. 2016, the APES exam has changed since then, but most of the content is still at least true, and again, since it's open Google, etc., just familiarizing yourself with some of the concepts might be a good idea. This final thing, old AP FRQ questions. This is the first thing I would do if I were studying. Maybe I should put it on the top. But by looking through old AP questions, and especially reading through sample responses and how graders left comments on, or like what comments were told to train graders about how to grade them, kind of seeing what kind of responses work, which kinds don't, how much detail you need to put in, kind of getting themes from previous years by looking at a lot of examples, I would strongly recommend, either taking the FRQs and then looking at the sample responses and commentary, or if you're really pressed for time and you don't want to do all of them, at least reading through some of those sample responses and commentary, just to get a good idea of what you need to do. Things we've talked about from before, like identify, describe, explain, describe/explain, and discuss, those all still hold. And I've posted lots of practice on MyAP, though it looks like people haven't taken me up on it yet. Of course, if you have any other questions, do just let me know. Hopefully this is a helpful overview for the APES test that's going to be coming up in just over a month now. All right. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.